Hello, happy Tuesday. Welcome to the Heart Dealer podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Okay, I'm gonna get this stupid stuff out of the way. Is it Brocarde?
It's Brocarde, but everyone from America, Canada, that side of the world wants to call me Brocarde, which
Brocarde is
sounds,
nice.
yeah, Brocarde is how I would say it with my British accent, so I guess that's what it should be.
100%. So, what is Brocarde? Because I mean, I looked it up, and obviously, all of your information populates, but I couldn't find like synonyms or antonyms or ancient lore. How'd you come up with the name?
Um, to be honest, this is just how I've been known for years and years and years. No one ever calls me anything apart from Brocard. And I feel like to me, that name, it kind of reminds me of a tapestry of like intricately woven pieces of a puzzle that all come together and create this kind of fabric of artistry, which sounds very airy-fairy and very pretentious almost. But I just felt like there's so many different elements to who I am. So that name just encompass everything that I do. There's kind of so many layers to the things that I love to create. And I found that when I wasn't in the studio recording, then I wanted to be in front of the camera. I wanted to film like YouTubes and horror documentaries. And it's kind of just an eclectic kind of project, which I feel like it kind of just works and it
Yeah,
just is. And it's stuff.
absolutely. I think the name's unique and sticks out. Did you come up with it? Was it like a nickname? How did it happen?
It's just how everyone has like called me. I guess it's kind of like a nickname. I guess it's an artist name. It's kind of like the only name I use now at all. Like even like everyone, like no one would call me anything else. So I think it is just kind of part of that. Yeah. I don't even know. Would you call it like a persona? It sounds so pretentious, but it's just a name. What's
Yeah.
in a name, huh?
These things kind of derive naturally. Like my last name is Gonda. That's what I was born with. My family heritage is not Gonda. In fact, I had a different last name like two generations ago. But because of the name, I'm Christopher James.
Mhm.
Everyone just calls me Gonda. My whole life I've just been Gonda. So similar to you, I adopted that persona, and that's why I'm Gonda.
Yeah, it's kind of cool, and if it works, it works. And now I just get surprised at the question. It's like, oh, it's just my name. Like, what? Like what? What? But yeah, I mean, if it kind of sticks, it sticks. So,
Cool. Okay, so you're obviously based in the UK. Where are you? Where were you born? Tell me a bit about young Brocard.
oh, young Brocarde was an interesting character. I was born in Oxfordshire, which is not too far away from London. I mean, I don't want to underestimate your knowledge of the UK. You could have traveled here a million times and know exactly where I'm talking about. But yeah, it's kind of like in the countryside outside London. And I had quite a traditional upbringing, I guess, if you could call it that. I mean, I kind of went to Sunday school. I kind of had a quite conformist upbringing. I went to quite a strict school, and I always loved performing from a really young age. And I feel like it was more than performing for me because I was that child at school, and you know, when you have these interviews and when you're kind of forced to look into your artistry more, you kind of realize how things start to make sense. So initially, when I started to write, I was just this little kid at school, and I would go into the woods at school and I would write silly little poems. Like when you're sort of 5 or 6, they're going to be about like cherries and dolls and trees. And even at that age, that was me being creative. Like I was kind of weird a little bit, but kind of trying to fit in. I didn't quite know what fitting in meant. I had a horrible time at school. Like I was a bookworm. I used to love reading books. I used to go home every day and sit there and read and read and read and read and read. And I love that kind of art of storytelling. And I think that kind of installed like a creativity in me and kind of made me want to share my emotions, made me want to tell stories of my own. So yeah, I think when you look back, everything starts to make sense. Like when you get to my age, you kind of process things. You don't necessarily have that angst anymore. I feel like writing a lot of my songs has got rid of that sort of teenage angst. It's dealt with a lot of those issues. So you kind of move past it and you start to become more analytical of yourself and the world around you. And yeah, it's just kind of interesting how it all kind of melts in together and creates who you are as an artist.
Absolutely. I mean, your bio, at least from what I was researching, talked about not fitting in, vulnerability, and then ultimately, realizing one's power and then focusing on that. Was it a long journey to get to that power, to get to this persona?
It was a really, I mean, I wouldn't say this is a persona at all. I would say this is the most me that I've ever felt. But it wasn't easy to kind of realize who I actually was. And it wasn't easy to kind of feel empowered enough just to say, look, this is me. This is what I think. This is what I feel. It might not be what you want me to be, but this is actually who I am. And I had some horrible years of being bullied and trying to fit into what I thought people wanted me to be. Like I went through a stage of dyeing my hair blonde and trying to fit into that kind of bubblegum mold, and it never fitted. Like even in my early days when I first went into the recording studio, I'm talking about as a teenager and in my early 20s, I I had these lyrics that were so dark. Like these lyrics were dark, and I was like, I want to do rock, I want to do metal. And when you're young and you're first starting out, you're not empowered enough to say to people, look, I really want this sound. This is my sound. This is me. So you kind of find that people chip away at you and they say, oh, well, because you're a young girl, you need to look like this, you need to be like this, it needs to be all bubblegum and rainbows. So my early music is just super heavy, intense lyrics with these like pop melodies. And I was like, oh no, this is just not what I want. And to have that confidence to stand up to all these people that believe in you and just say, look, this just isn't me. That's not where I want to go. That takes like maturity and that takes inner self confidence because everyone has an opinion. Everyone has an opinion on how you should sound, how you should dress, how you should look, whether you should gain weight, whether you should lose weight, whether you should dye your hair, whether you should wear more makeup, less makeup, more revealing clothes. Everyone has an opinion. And as a young adult, kind of growing up, when you're not confident in yourself, all of those like opinions just sort of swirl around inside your brain and you just don't know where you are.
Yeah, I totally agree. And ultimately, you went through all of those to come out the other side and have a more, I guess, innate understanding of who you are and what makes you happy. And ultimately, that's the persona that we're starting to see more and more now.
Yeah, no, I feel like for a long time now, for a good few, like sort of 5, 10 years, like I've come into my own and I can feel like that is my sound. And of course, you grow up over those years. Like the songs that I wrote 5, 10 years ago aren't necessarily the songs that I want to write now, but you're within the same artistry. You're the same artist. You have the same points of view. You can still look back at a song and say, well, I still feel those lyrics because they are me. I think that's quite important.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I want to talk about horror. I want to talk about metal. I want to talk about publicity. What came first, the music or the movies? Was it the metal or the horror that came first?
I've always seen it. Like I've always had quite a cinematic brain. Like even when I sit in a quiet room with a notebook, and this is how everything is very like grassroots, very authentic. I will literally sit there, lights out, notebook in hand, can't write on an iPad, absolutely hate it. I get too distracted. I'm just like Googling stuff. So I sit there with a notebook, and when I'm writing those lyrics and singing that melody, I will see the visual that I want to attach to it. Like a lot of my songs, I've really seen that whole video almost playing out inside my mind. And then it just becomes a process of finding the right sounds to create that feeling or adding to those emotions. And I feel like I'm constantly trying to orchestrate my emotions and then add a visual to the emotion. And it just feels like there's never any thought to, oh, this needs to be heavy rock. What genre does this fit into? I go through genres quite fluidly. I think because I find when I want to express like a delicate side of my personality, it will become more, I will use like my operatic head voice, like that's how I was trained. I will use that softer tone, and naturally that will be orchestrated with violins and strings, and then the kind of inner angst, like I can't always hide it, like it will always come out somehow. And
Mhm.
then like that heavy metal, like alt, whatever you want to call it, new metal, like that. But it's always like an authentic decision just to orchestrate the emotion. It's never like, oh, we got to write a rock song, I've got to write a pop song, I've got to write this. It's always just like, what journey can I hopefully take that listener on? I want to take them on like a very visual journey from start to finish, where it's almost like watching a movie. And I've always been so fascinated by that. Like people like Tim Burton, I just love that whole kind of world where visually and cinematically it's just quite impacting and interesting. So that's kind of how I would go about things.
It sounds like, as a child, you were doing lots of reading, and then almost that's kind of what informed this cinematic vision you had when you started to write lyrics. But was there like, I want to know, what's the moment? I have mine. Art is so impactful, and I remember being 10ish and going over to my neighbor Julian Taylor's house. He's since gone on to become quite the successful Canadian musician. But I'm in his house. I'm 10. He's 15. I don't know how old. And Pet Cemetery was on, and we were in his basement bedroom. And I'm watching this movie. I've never seen horror in my life, and I remember being terrified and also thinking, this is so interesting, and I need to learn more about horror. What was your horror moment?
Um, I don't know if I have that defining lightning bolt moment like that, but I remember like very distinct moments where, like, as I said, I was classically trained growing up. So my musical my teacher was teaching me to sing like arias in Latin. And this isn't rock and roll at all, but I remember this time that my dad picked me up from school and he put like Phantom of the Opera on. And that kind of drama that kind of filled the car, I was like, well, this is cool. And then things like he used to play things like Bat Out of Hell, like Meat Loaf. And I was like, yeah, this is a story. This is theatrical. This is like, I can invest into this. And none of those references are particularly cool. But I think that kind of theatrical element and that kind of 80s kind of, I mean, I don't even know what you call it. But that, I think that has had an impact on me. And I think coupled with being the kind of young girl who was hiding in the woods, like trying to write these poems, trying to find a voice of my own. And I was like, yeah, this is a voice. This is using your voice to like reel people in. This is taking people on a journey. So I was like, ah, okay.
That makes total sense. So it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but music, writing, creation, that was first. That was the impetus for all of this. And then the horror gothic angle was not an angle, but like what you're creating was then layered on top of this musical push that you had. Does that sound fair?
Yeah. No, I think that's right. And I think as well, like, you got to remember a lot of those songs that I was writing were quite haunted. They were quite haunting. Like the lyrics were quite chilling to
Mhm.
me. So that kind of did work. You know, when I was talking about having that sort of cinematic vision, that's what naturally worked. And I'm hugely inspired by the horror genre. I'm not necessarily, and this might come as a surprise, and it always does, I find it very hard to watch horror movies from a pleasurable perspective. I would not necessarily be like, I'm a movie lover, which is quite funny because I think I live it so much and I use that so much as part of my own creativity. When it comes to things like escapism, like going to the cinema, watching films for pleasure, that's kind of taken away because that is my life, that is my work. So
Mm.
I don't want to be scared when I go to the cinema. I don't want to be scared in my downtime. Like that's just part of my emotional process for me. So a lot of people are surprised by that because they expect me to be one of those people that has watched every horror movie that exists. But I like the real side of horror and I like the real stories that, people are impacted by genuinely and not necessarily on a cinematic level.
That's why I love these chats, to understand the person more and what makes them tick. Uh, are ghosts real?
I 100% believe that ghosts are real. I had a really powerful encounter with a spirit, and I was one of those children. Like when I grew up, of course, I was slightly interested in horror movies, not like in a weird way, like not in a, and I would see things when I was young. And when you're young, you just go, oh, I saw a ghost, ha ha ha. But it's not conclusive. It's just like you think you see a shadow in a window, you think you sort of see a figure in the distance. And it wasn't until like several years ago that I had an impacting encounter, which really changed my perception of ghosts. And you say, are ghosts real? To me, spirits are very, very real. There is definitely, for me, a dimension out there that we don't truly understand, that completely exists. It exists alongside us. I don't think that everyone is going to invest into that, because it took me having a powerful encounter to open my eyes to that. So I still think it's a completely fascinating topic. I could talk about that till the cows come home. I love hearing other people's encounters. And I feel as well, especially when I travel the world a lot. I go into haunted locations. I spend a lot of time talking to people who can see spirit. I spend a lot of time talking to psychic mediums. And it just becomes quite normalized for me. Like, especially in, like in the States, in Canada, so many people have seen spirits, more so than over here in the UK. We're kind of like, ha ha ha, ghosts, ha ha, you saw a ghost. But I think it's a fascinating world, and I just definitely truly believe that we are not the only people here. And I think, I don't know, I just think it's so fascinating.
I agree with you, and there's nothing that says one way or another if something is real or not real. Similar to aliens, the history of the pyramids, we just don't
Yeah.
know. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, or that it's not real. I had an experience when I was in uni for you, university for me. I was sober. I was not hungover. I was not smoking pot or drinking. I remember going to bed because we all these little dorms. I remember going to bed and then being kind of woken up in the middle of the night. Uh, and my little bed was facing the door, and to the right of the door, I had a little clothes cabinet. And I remember waking up and seeing a figure going through the clothes cabinet. I was terrified, so
Wow.
I immediately went put my head over the sheets and covered as a very strong 20-year-old man does.
Mm.
And then I pulled it back down, and she, I don't know what it was still going through that. Then that just dissipated in front of my eyes. And I was blown away. I have goosebumps just thinking about it now. I was
Yeah.
blown away. And I didn't take it one way or another. I just said that was an unusual experience, and it opened my mind to, like you said, other realities, so to speak. Was yours similar, or is it more specific?
Um,
Is it the
mine
Eduardo story?
Yeah, mine was really, really impacting. Like my spiritual encounter was something that really drastically affected my life. And it's like you said at the beginning of telling your ghost story, I wasn't drunk, I wasn't on drugs, I'm not mental, all of these questions that people kind of like to associate with people who see spirits. But I was just struggling to get to sleep one night, and I just had this impacting sensation. Firstly, start off like right in my heart. And it's really hard to describe looking back at this, but it was almost like being a passenger in my own body. I could feel this entity move throughout my body really, really slowly. And it was like I was above myself, looking down on myself.
Mhm.
And it was like the most, it affected every single scent. Like, all of the five senses were triggered. Like, I could smell this ghost. I could smell this musty scent of like Victorian uniform. I could see this apparition. I could feel this ghost. I could hear like the whisper in my ear. And I tried to like reach for the light, and something grabbed my hand and stopped me turning the light on. And I reached back, I tried to turn the light on again, and something pushed my body completely upright. And I started shaking. I had tears running down my face. I was just trembling, and I could literally feel this force moving out of my body, and then nothing. Then it went. And it's the weirdest thing ever. And that kind of, for me, that opened up my ability to communicate with spirit. And since that moment, I have been able to see apparitions, I've been able to sense ghosts, I've been able to know things that I shouldn't. Like, as a human, I'm an empath. Like, I can read people's emotions. Like, if I'm in a room and someone's uncomfortable, or someone's wary of me, or someone doesn't like me, or if someone's sad, like, I will get affected. Like, as a human, I'm an empath. And I can sense that with spirits as well, which I think is often the case when you're talking to people who have can communicate with spirits in real life with humans. They are very empathetic, and they really kind of absorbed people's energy. And with spirits, I absorb that energy. And sometimes, like, for example, I've been into derelict prisons, I've been into derelict hospitals, and sometimes I will take on the emotion of the spirit that is in that property, and it will make me feel sad, it will make me feel sick, it will make me see things and know things about these, like, the spirit. And that, to me, like, I absolutely hated this at the beginning because I wasn't prepared for it. A long time after that first encounter, I didn't want it. I didn't want to see ghosts. I didn't want to experience ghosts. I didn't want that in my life. I just wanted it to go away, and I just wanted to see humans and communicate with humans. And it took me quite a long time to accept that that is just the way it is now. And the less that I fight it, the less dramatic that, like, that activity will be. And I kind of find that quite a bizarre conversation as well, because it's quite normal to resist spirits. And I think there is, like, an element when you're dealing with spirits that they will become more aggressive, more, like, haunting, more terrifying if you resist their existence. And even things like trying to get spirits exercise now, I would just say, look, they exist alongside us, and that's just how it is. And you don't have to believe that if you don't see that, if you don't sense it. But they were here first, they've lived on this earth. It's energy, like, it's like residual energy. We don't really have the right to kind of go around exercising that and getting rid of them. And I just feel like, accept it, take it for what it is. And yeah, if you can deal with that, like, I mean, obviously I embrace that side of me now, because I don't have to go to haunted houses. I don't have to go into haunted prisons. I don't have to investigate this area. But for me, those stories and those kind of encounters are really fascinating. And that, alongside with, I love, like, haunted history. I'm not a history buff. I couldn't recite facts about any historic building, but I love, like, old places. I love vintage clothing. I kind of feel often like I was born in the wrong era. Like, I love Victorian clothes. The ghost that kind of came into my life was a Victorian soldier. And I spoke to a psychic medium, and she had this theory that I was born in that era. I existed in another life, which again is a fascinating theory, whether you believe it or not. It's interesting, and it's
Absolutely.
interesting for someone as well, like, who's creative, because all of those experiences do end up going into your work. You'll write a song about a human, you'll write a song about a man you've fallen out with, or someone you hate, or someone you love. Writing songs about spirits, again, it comes into your work, because if something's happening to you as a songwriter, that's how you process it. So it seeps into my work, and the worlds are kind of blurred now.
Yeah. You said so many interesting things there that I agree with, or that I can understand. I mean, you mentioned energy. You said you can't just get rid of that energy. That makes sense too, because energy kind of shifts, right? So if you get rid of something somewhere, it populates somewhere else. It's also one of the reasons why billions of people, I'm assuming billions of people, if you go back through history, have believed in reincarnation, have believed in these ideas, because the planet is hundreds of millions of years old, and there have been these entities that have lived these very short timelines and come back. And this concept of life and rebirth, and maybe not an afterlife, but something in between, it makes sense because it's all just energy.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because sometimes this kind of whole world of like spirituality can sometimes be as simple as like feeling like you've been here before or feeling like you know things that you don't. Like that kind of thing as well can all go under that like barrier. And it depends what kind of conversation that you want to have about ghosts. I mean, ghosts are very similar to humans in that they all have their personalities, they have a sense of humor, a lot of them. So, if someone wants to have the humorous conversation about ghosts, then of course, like ghosts can be funny, they can be interesting. But then there's the other side to that conversation, which makes you sound less mad, which is like the reasoning that, when you do pass away, especially if a lot of ghosts as well, like they were quite powerful characters in real life. Like this is why you'll often find the energy of someone who is a serial killer, someone who is in a haunted prison, because that level of energy is a lot more powerful than the average guy who had a normal life. And especially as well with the spirit of celebrities, like these celebrities, like a lot of people think they see Marilyn Monroe, and a lot of people think they see the ghosts of Elvis and things like that. But that energy is different to some people's human energy. Like
Mhm.
as humans, we're all different. Like if you are a sort of global iconic superstar, you have an energy where you do not want to be forgotten. In life, you are fighting to be remembered, fighting to be famous, fighting for people to know your name. And in death, that energy can still linger and you still want to be present in people's minds and in people's lives. So that's how I explain it. But of course, people have so many different views on this. So I'm just speaking my truth. I mean, I appreciate there's going to be hundreds of people that won't agree with my theory, but that's what makes the world so interesting.
Absolutely. I don't have any theories. I have positions in life. I don't have opinions. I have positions because I feel like our opinions, our positions constantly shift and change. And if they don't,
Mm,
you're not having enough conversations with interesting people because our job is to create and to learn. It's funny because there are theories that everything in this universe is just frequency and vibration, energy, right?
mm.
Everything that we are vibrating at a certain energy, and that's why we appear solid, but we're not actually solid. We're just molecules that are held together through vibrational. So when you die and that energy disperses, if you are a very strong, confident person, maybe someone who uh, manifests, right? Law of attraction. You're using your energy. You're pulling a lot of things in. I could see how that energy would stick around, or it would create some kind of uh, bursting of energy in that energy, like in that area, that might impact other people long after you've passed away. I
Yeah,
mean,
and I think,
I was just going to say,
sorry.
Ozzy's died. Talk about impactful energy, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's obviously far too soon for people to be picking up on his spirit, but of course that was a huge energy. I mean, huge in life, like huge in death. I mean, to create that kind of legacy, people are going to want to feel like in some way that he is still around and he is still you know and there's I don't know if you've seen this all over the internet, but a lot of people like on the day of his funeral were posting pictures of sort of bat-shaped clouds and things like that, which I mean, I don't know, I haven't experienced that personally, but people want to believe that that energy is still alive as well, which again is another theory, because if you want to believe it, are you looking for it and then somehow manifesting it? It's kind of that theory as well, that you will experience a ghost if you are ready for it. Because if you're a skeptic, you're going to write everything off as something else. And I think that's a healthy place to start with. If you see something, you have to write it off initially, but sometimes things are too impacting to write off like that.
I agree. I'll take it a step further too. Like there is coincidence, but
Mm,
too much coincidence is not, something that I buy. There's an adage: where there's smoke, there's fire. I'm a big 1 in 3 guy, hence my company V13, which is elite speak, the internet language of mixing letters and numbers, for la vie, life, because I believe that music and our connection is life. Um, Similar to what you're saying, the frequencies, the vibrations, we're all just energetically connected, full stop, end of story. And that's how the fabric of the universe is done up. If I see a 1 in 3, or some see, like, you pause the movie and it's, an hour and 3 minutes and 31 seconds, sure, might be coincidence. But when you start to have that happen a dozen times, multiple dozen times in a day, in a week, in a month. Um, I don't think that that's coincidence. Some people will say it's your subconscious, and you're looking for
Yeah.
that, and you don't even realize you're looking for that. But I'm not choosing when to pause a movie or turn on the radio or
Yeah.
whatever it is, subconsciously thinking, "Oh, wait for it. You're gonna pause it at this right time," before I've even realized that I'm pausing it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's fascinating. And I personally don't really believe in the art of coincidence. I think everything, and the older I get as well, I do also think that you are meant to meet people at a certain time. And
Yeah.
there's often a lesson there, like that can push you in a different direction or can remind you of something that you're meant to be doing. It's kind of like we're subconsciously being steered in some way as well, which I think is comforting. I mean, I'm not saying we have no control over our lives. Like if I just sat in my bedroom and didn't release music, then I'm not going to be a famous musician. But there is like you can meet people at certain points who remind you of that goal, who steer you in the right direction, who put you back on that path. So it's
Mhm.
it's kind of interesting to live like that, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I've very recently I've had a crazy couple years, and it's really kind of changed how I view the world and how I view myself and how much I love myself. I about a month and a half ago had a little girl, and a week later on Father's Day she passed away.
Oh,
And
goodness.
I'm sharing this story because it's a tragedy, and this is kind of the hardest thing for any parent to have to go through ever. However, I was already shifting my mindset to be in a much more positive place and believing that things happen for a reason, just like you said, that I am where I'm supposed to be, and that when something happens to me, it doesn't just happen to me, it happens to everyone that's involved in that. And
Mm,
that was her journey. That was her journey to be alive for a week and then to be gone. And when I started to reflect on it further, I said to my girlfriend, I said, this is crazy. Because we had a bunch of issues towards the beginning of a relationship, and I wasn't sure that things were going to work out, mostly because of me and being fresh out of a marriage. I wasn't really ready to be with this person, but we got pregnant by accident. By accident, we were blessed with this baby, um, and the baby is what allowed us to stay together, because I probably would have not been with her.
mm,
And then the loss of the child afterwards solidified that bond. And we've been like so tight ever since. And so maybe the point of her life was to have saved my life, was for me to have realized how important this other woman is, to not have squandered that relationship. And then with the death, she's basically signposting that you guys are now good. You're going to get through this together. It's going to help with your relationship. My job here is done, and I'm off to the next incarnation of whatever I'm going to be. Just an opinion, just a position,
yeah.
but
But I
that's
mean,
what I'm taking from it.
but it's beautiful as well, like to have that like way of looking at it and to being to not be consumed with grief and to look at it like that, like there was a greater purpose for it. That's so much more healthy than just thinking that everything now is just doomed because you had this terrible tragedy. And I think as well, like sometimes when people, a lot of people look for spirits, like when they've lost a loved one, because they want to feel like there's a purpose, they want to feel that comfort. And I think that that is itself a beautiful thing, like sort of the kind of theory that when you die, that is it, is a horrible feeling. And that's not very comforting for anyone. You want to feel like there's a purpose. You want to feel like that spirit and that energy lives on. And you want to feel like it's coming, there's a reason for things. And I think that is a nice way to look at things. So I'm really pleased that you kind of like look at it like that. And I think that's really beautiful that you've made it into something that can be so positive, even though it's a tragedy. Like, so it's hard
Yeah,
to find the right words when you're talking about something so personal to someone.
I appreciate that. I mean, it's still a tragedy. It's still painful. You still cry and grieve, but that's it. That's like you talked at the beginning of this interview about finding yourself and having gone through like the bullying and these other things to get there. And that's exactly what's happened. I've had like 2 years of tribulation that's toughened my resolve and helped me sharpen my sense of self and getting those tools allows you to go through these things easier. And I do genuinely believe now that for the most part, bad things are just unrealized good things, right? So when something bad happens to someone, they have the choice how they approach it and how like they handle it and how it impacts them. But if you have the right mindset, it will turn into something positive. I see so many inspirational stories, or have seen so many, like the Navy SEAL who was doing stuff in the ocean and then his leg was bitten off by a shark. And now he spent, I don't want to say his whole life because I don't have the facts in front of me, but he spent like a decent chunk of his life then dedicated to sharks and understanding, who they are, and not allowing this to be this like sharks are bad and my leg's gone and tragedy. He turned it into something positive, and so many people have done that. I mean, I remember seeing a horrific story about a lady who had lost her entire family, children, husband, everything, and she went on to become this speaker who was going around to different schools and areas talking about her story and how she's then turned it into something positive. And through helping others, through finding the love in that story, flipping it on its head and saying, this is not a tragedy. This is something that I can now share positively with the world.
Yeah, and sometimes those decisions aren't even a subconscious thing. Like sometimes you just feel like that inner fight kick into you, and you
Mhm.
feel like those lessons are being like installed into you. And at the time, you don't necessarily even know why. Like, but it's kind of like, I know we're talking about real like heavy, horrible, hard hitting topics, but it was like the kind of moment when I first explained to you when I had that paranormal
Yeah.
encounter. I had the choice then to kind of go public with that and talk about it. And before that incident, looking back to how I was, even though I wasn't the same girl who was being bullied in school, I was so painfully shy. Like, I would not make a phone call without someone helping me. I would struggle with things like this. I would struggle to go on like TV. I would struggle to interview people. I was socially very uncomfortable unless I knew someone really, really well. And I got invited onto this British TV show, and I was like, I can't do this. I can't, once I go on this TV show and talk about this ghost, I'm going to be a laughing stock.
Mhm.
And like, my friend said to me, like, you have to do this because this will be the making of you. Once you go and do this, any kind of fear associated with anything will be gone because it won't get any worse than this. Yeah, people will have their opinion. Yeah, people will ridicule you. Yeah, you'll be the joke. But you will have a whole new sense of confidence because after that moment, you won't have that social anxiety. You won't have that thing holding you back. You won't have that fear that, in their opinion, was holding me back from going where I wanted to be. And it's just quite mad to just look back on how life teaches you these weird things. Like, was I meant to meet that ghost at at that specific time? Because I was kind of trapped. Like, I was loving writing music, I was enjoying it, but yeah, do you know what I mean? I was kind of like stuck within my own kind of insecurity and do I release this? Do I go forward? And that kind of fearlessness to just get out there and not care what people thought. It kind of came from nowhere. And I just kind of pinch myself now because I'm going to these music festivals. I'm standing there like interviewing these huge celebrities. I'm talking to them. I'm on camera all the time. And I am the person I couldn't even watch a music video. I used to hate the sound of my voice. I used to be like crippled with insecurity, and I used to look at a picture of myself and I used to hate it. Couldn't watch a music video being edited. Now I'm just sitting there editing them myself. I'm sitting there throughout the process. I don't look at the things I hate about myself anymore. I just look at it as a part of my art. And it's still a struggle. Like when you watch yourself back all day, every day, I annoy the hell out of myself. But I'm so annoying. People are watching this, they're going to be like, yeah, you're really annoying. But you watch yourself back and you just see all the things that you you hate, and it's just like getting past that and like powering through, like pushing past that kind of pain and that fear and that horrible things that have happened to you. Because all of this stems from when I was a child in the playground and people were nasty to me. I didn't fit in. I looked awful. Like, I actually look back and I didn't look awful, but I was bullied. I was taller than everyone else. I was bigger than everyone else. I went through puberty before everyone else. I had boobs before everyone else. I was different. And I didn't handle that well at that time. And it was just horrible. But it's just kind of, it makes you who you are. It gives you something to talk about. It changes the course of your life having those experiences. So yeah, it can be a blessing in disguise. And it it can take people years to realize this. You hear so many artists saying, "Oh, I was bullied at school. I had horrible things happen to me," and you find that strength through them to push through and become a better version of yourself. So it can be a blessing in disguise.
It's funny how many of the old adages and cliches exist and are so apt, and we don't take them seriously enough. And we talk about, like, carpe diem, and people get the tattoo, but how many people are actually living that? How many people are saying to themselves, like, "Oh yeah, this is that moment in my life where I have to remember what hurts us heals us," or the only way through, or the out of the fire, sorry, is through the fire. And then you have to go through those things in order to see growth. I've been saying for the last 2 years, without destruction, you can't have construction.
Mm.
And it sounds like that you've experienced a lot of that, both as a child and then now more recently with this paranormal event, and then leveling up.
Yeah, and I feel as well like the you don't realize how powerful talking about these things are. Like I remember like a really random story. I remember when I was first starting, I wanted to record my album. I was at that stage after I'd done all the pop music and I wanted to be properly in metal. And I was so closed. I had all this stuff bubbling away inside of me. I had all these stories and I wasn't willing to talk about it. And I met this is a very weird story, and I don't normally talk about this. I had this meeting with this producer who has fairly recently passed away because he got killed in a motorcycle accident. And I sat there at that time in my life and I was blown away. I did not know this guy. I'd spoken to him a bit. Like, this was the guy I wanted to make my record. And I was sat there with him and I was blown away by his openness. I went for breakfast with him and he literally told me a really tragic story about his wife who'd passed away, the story about how he was now bringing up her children and just all really personal stuff. And I was just like, I've been in this room with you for half an hour, but I know you. Like, you've allowed me to know who you are. And because of that, I'm fascinated. And that really taught me that impacted me as an artist, and I was like, that is what I need to be like to be an artist. Like, I need to be that open and that comfortable just to say to a stranger, this is my story, this is who I am. And again, that's another bizarre situation. um but yeah, it just like people can guide you in ways that they probably don't even realize. And I think if we lead by example, talking about these things does unite us, and you can find strength in that.
Yeah. Um, it's funny, the story you just shared, that person, myself, you, when you are authentically yourself, when you embrace yourself, when you love yourself, when you're just like, fuck it, this is who I am. And if people don't like it, I don't care. I'm going to be me. End of story. That's when you start to attract people. That's when, for example, as a content creator, you start to create your best content. That's when you start to develop a following. I heard this really cool principle recently where you should never look for a following. You should never look for fans. You should attract fans. And I'm just now in this moment realizing it's something that I've been talking about with my team for a year and a half, where I saw a video and they were talking about sales and bringing in sales and bringing in revenue. And the analogy they used was, it doesn't matter how big of a net, it's always the same thing that you're trying to do with catching the butterflies. And you know what's way easier than uh, catching butterflies? Just build a garden and invite them in.
Yeah.
And I think that you're doing that really successfully. I mean, you've got 200,000 followers on IG. You're building this brand, and you're doing it by being you and by being real and not being scared to share your story and have people interpret it the way that they want.
Yeah. I mean, I still like getting increasingly more open. Like, I feel like obviously sometimes as because I'm so theatrical and I'm such a performer, then like that is kind of like my safety net, but I'm getting better and better and better. And I used to just have this theory, like as an artist, you don't go on Instagram and just say, buy my single, buy my single, buy my single. Like, people want to know you. And I've learned so many lessons. Like, I interview bands now for my channel and for my YouTube and for my website. And I realized, like, I had this band, and I'm not going to name them because that's mean, but they were a new and upcoming band. And when I'm interviewing someone like you, I want to know the person, I want to know the story, I want to know, why are you like you are? What are your beliefs? Like, what makes you tick? Do you believe in spiritual stuff? Are you religious? And this guy, he like looked at me and he's like, why aren't you asking me about my music? That's a terrible impression. And I was like, because people want to know who you are and why you write the music. Like, I can talk about like guitar. Well, I probably can't because I'm not like a music geek, but I can talk about my song and my like create like this song, this, and it's like, but who are you? Like, who are you behind that song? That's what people want to know. They don't want to know you've got a new single out and it's produced by blah 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 and this guitar riff is here. Like, if you're a techno geek, you might love that stuff, but people want to know, why did you write this song? Like, what happened to you in your life? Why are you writing about heartbreak? Why are you writing about being bullied? Like, why are you religious? Do you go to church? Like, do you believe in ghosts? Do you believe in aliens? Who are you? Like, and to me, I just felt it crazy that I was having to tell this person that people just want to know who you are, and you need to like just open up and be who you are. And I like I read people so well, which makes it very difficult when you're, and a lot of people will have a barrier up. They will try and send you off on a scent. And sometimes someone will sit in front of me and they'll be all like sort of gothed up with all this armor, the sunglasses, the leather jacket. And I can see that they want you to think that they're this, but they're not that. And I know they're not that. Like, I want to see behind the glasses. I want to see who you actually are. I don't want to see who you think you want to be. I don't want to see this rock star that's untouchable. I want to know who you are and why you are like you are. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's what makes your music connect. And I think that's what makes the world go round. And the more artists you see doing that makes me feel comfortable. Like, a lot of people say to me, oh, you're in the wrong genre, because rock and metal is about anger and masking that. Like, you need to be in country. And I'm like, well, what does it matter which genre it is, just as long as you're yourself, you know?
Yeah. Which, I mean, to whoever said that to you, I would completely disagree with that person, because of all the genres that I've ever worked, which is all of them, metal is the most loving, inclusive, caring community that you can find out there. It's the most
Yeah.
authentic. People are just yelling and screaming and getting everything out so that they can go home rejuvenated and free of whatever it is that they had to release.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it is a lovely crowd. Like, I remember like being absolute, like, I went to Download Festival a couple of years ago, and it was a while since I was in like a mass environment of rock fans, and I was absolutely blown away by how many lovely people would just come up to you and go, "Oh my God, your dress is amazing. You look great today." Like, really uplifting, lovely stuff. And I'm just like, this is so nice. Like, no bitchiness, no horribleness. I mean, of course that exists in some areas. I mean,
Mhm.
that's the world we live in, but that sort of sense of community and celebrating your people, like, like, you're one of us, like, this is our crew, like, and it was really nice. Like, it was a nice feeling of community. And I suppose someone like me would notice that more, because when I was growing up, I didn't necessarily have that like peer group who, I mean, I had friends, but I didn't have that feeling of like belonging somewhere. And I think a lot of like rock and metal fans find that feeling of belonging from this community, which is quite a powerful thing, I guess.
Yeah. I want to pivot into music and publicity, but just a quick, anecdote. You mentioned that you're doing a lot of interviews and that you're trying to see people for who they are, so to speak. It's funny because I remember, I mean, I started doing interviews like 20 years ago, and you start to go to venues and you're talking to people backstage, and it's really cool. You got a recorder, then eventually you switch to video. I realized really quickly that artists didn't give a shit about talking about the stuff that the publicists and the labels were saying to talk about the album and the tour and this, because they get asked that stuff all the time. I realized that they wanted to just have a conversation, they wanted to have fun. So I started to bring like different ideas, like what's the, craziest tour accident you've ever had? What's, what's more metal, the Kardashians or something else? We did a series called Most Extreme. um, we just started to get really crazy. I did a Rorschach ink blot test where I would hold up signs and they'd tell me what they saw. And really, it comes down to, I think, having conversations, real conversations, because I also had a career in and around sales and business development. And I found that as soon as you just were yourself, the other person got comfortable. And then when
Yeah.
both people were comfortable, they started to have a more real conversation. And then they start to get to that end result faster. The deal was closed faster, so to speak. Or in an interview situation, you just have a better interview because you're having a conversation. And maybe we've done this stupid thing as society where we've like ascribed a thing to what an interview is supposed to be. Prep 10 questions and ask 10 questions, and that is your interview. It's not. Have talking points, understand who the guest is, have a few notes, whatever, but then do this. Just talk.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's conversational and it flows. And I think as well, it's that thing you say that there comes a point where people stop seeing it as an interview and it's just a conversation and you're just being normal. Whereas if you're kind of having questions aggressively fired at you and you feel like you can't be yourself, like it sets the guest on edge. And yeah, I think it's interesting to be both sides of the coin. You learn a lot and you learn a lot about yourself and you learn a lot about people. So yeah, good life lessons, I guess.
Absolutely. I mean, that's probably why long form content and podcasts are so popular now because people get real and then people get to see real conversations and they feel more connected to that than everything else that's, 5-second clips and contrived online.
Yeah.
But we digress from horror and metal. let
Yes,
me
yeah.
let me go back into what you're doing. So, what I was interested in kind of segueing into was the music video for Identity Theft. Gloucester, I mean, I'm probably saying it wrong. Gloucester
Yeah.
Prison?
Gloucester Prison, but yeah,
Gloucester.
I think that's just your accent. But yeah, it's Gloucester.
All right, so Gloucester Prison, it's one of Britain's most haunted locations. Uh, how does someone it might be a dumb question. I don't know. How does someone like go into those types of situations and embrace it and not want to run away? Because there's the classic analogy of like haunted house and spend a night and no way I'm running away. How does one get over that and embrace the fear, so to speak, of the ghosts and the paranormal?
Well, sometimes you don't. Like, I do remember times when I've been places and they have been genuinely terrifying. But I think with Gloucester Prison, obviously my primary focus was to film a music video. Like that was, I had the scenes, I had the storyboard, I had the concept, I had to give birth to the alien. And I feel like through a lot of that shoot, I was shutting a lot of stuff out and focusing on getting the job done. And I think it's very different. Like when I go into these places as well to do sort of ghost hunts, and you are purely there to tune in to the energy that's there. But I found like with my music video shoot, I was trying hard to tune a lot of what was going on out, which is the complete opposite to what I will do when I do a paranormal investigation. And like Gloucester Prison is a scary place. It's got a lot of haunted history, and especially after dark, because I think with all of these haunted prisons, they are so, so vast. And it's not an open space. Like you've got cells, you've got hidden areas, you hear noises, and it's not like an empty room. You can't see everything, which adds to its fear factor. But talking of haunted prisons, the most terrifying prison I have ever been to is in Nevada, Nevada State Penitentiary. That place blows the socks off of any British prison that we have over here. And it's terrifying for several reasons. Like, first, like probably the reason I was most terrified is because they locked me in an execution chamber on death row. I kind of went there and they have their whole paranormal team. This is the thing for them. They spend hours and hours researching the paranormal. They sit there doing seances every night. And the woman looked at me and she's like, "Oh, you see spirit. You're going to have a fun time here." And kind of left me go off into this building for hours. And then at the end, she's like, "I'm going to let you go in the execution chamber." I was like, "Okay." And it's one of those situations where it's like one of those you want to. Like my spirit of adventure is like, yes, I want to do this. But it's absolutely terrifying. Like it's a huge submarine door and you are there with all this suppressed energy. And that for me was far scarier than Gloucester Prison. Like that was hardcore. That was like in the middle of nowhere, no lights at all. Like the building was pitch black and there were so many noises. And it was actually next door to a working, like functional prison. So when you heard a noise, you weren't sure if that was a spirit or if that was like some escaped prisoner. And I think I would rather have the ghost than some escaped prisoner like jumping out on me. But yeah, I think the music video shoot, obviously, I had a focus beyond the paranormal, but it doesn't stop it coming in. But it's very different to going out there looking for it and kind of talking about the haunted history and taking dowsing rods and like taking like equipment and seeing what you can feel and seeing what you can sense.
Yeah. Excuse me. That makes sense. What I want to like really dig into is how does one even get the courage to do that? Like most people won't go to a haunted prison, let alone shoot a music video in there. So what is the psychology? What are you doing to kind of not be scared, so to speak, and just do it rather than what
I
everyone
think
else would do and say, I ain't going in there.
Yeah, I feel like it's part of my job now, it's part of my existence now. A lot of me thinks that I can't be more terrified than when I had my first spiritual
Mhm.
encounter. I feel like that was it for me, and now I've learned to kind of deal with it. And maybe I've just maybe I'm just used to it, and maybe I'm not scared by it in the same way that I used to be. Maybe my intrigue, and this has always been the case with me, my intrigue will always take over. I'm fascinated by those places and by like the energy that's still in them, and I'm intrigued and I want to go in and I want to experience that. And these in some ways as well, they're quite beautifully haunting. Like it's like we were saying earlier, there is a beauty in that kind of decay and that demise and that heavy, dark energy. There is something beautiful about that. And it is quite inspiring in some ways. You can channel that into your creativity, you can kind of take on that energy into your performance. And I just find those sorts of places really cool. I just don't think now I would be like, oh, let's go and film a video in a studio. That would just be so uninspiring. And I
Mhm.
think, yeah, I just think as well, it kind of just aids that like visual, because when something is genuinely scary and something is genuinely haunting and you're singing about a haunting, like gothic, creepy song, like obviously that's going to be channeled into your performance. So I think it kind of, to me, it seems, why wouldn't you go in there? But I get why some people would be scared.
No, I mean that makes perfect sense, and I think that ties back to what we were saying earlier, which is that you just got to face your fears, and ultimately the only way out is through. And if you do that, to your point, things become not necessarily not scary, but more palpable or palatable than when you first start. You know, it's kind of like talking in front of an audience. You start with 100 people, and then all of a sudden, 100 people is not that big a deal, and you start getting a bigger, bigger, bigger. Anything in life.
Yeah, I think as well, like I do seem quite blasé. Like I notice it within myself when I'm talking about, oh, I saw a ghost, I saw a spirit. Like sometimes I can just be filming something and I'll be like, yeah, there's a ghost there, there's a spirit of a young, and I'll be so like almost like non-de-plussed about it because it seems normal to me. So maybe I'm just used to having that energy and that presence. So I'm not like, sometimes it's like but like normally it's not like that. It's like there's, I can see a spirit, I can sense this, and yeah, I feel like maybe I'm just a bit more immune.
There. Um, you've obviously been going hard with music. I think that your debut is 2019. I could be wrong, like musical debut. You've got a bunch of new singles now. You got a music video. Tell me a bit about where you're going with the music, and then I would love to talk about just content creation and publicity in general?
I mean, I feel like music-wise now, like I'm full throttle with this. Like for a long time now, I've had my album ready and raring to go. I feel like sometimes you know within yourself when the time is right. You can feel that the time is right. And then, you will have encounters in life that we were talking about this earlier that will remind you of your goal and will push you back on that path. Like I remember when I was last summer, I was sort of touring around, like working with all these festivals, interviewing bands, like doing things like ghost hunting at festivals, doing things like seances. And I I bumped into like my friend Ray, who performs drums on a few of my tracks. And he's like, what happened to all those amazing songs? What are you doing? Like, where is the music? And he like took me side stage and I was just like standing there in awe, looking out at them headlining this huge gig in Germany. And I thank him for that. Like, I've said this to him, and he kind of reminded me of that dream. And I was like, yeah, I do actually have music that I'm really proud of. And I can't keep getting distracted. I have to like pick a point and go for it. I can't be scared about this anymore. I can't keep holding it back. And now I just want to get it out there and I want to keep releasing. And I think music is hard. Like when something means so much to you, I think the music industry is really, really brutal. And people keep saying to me, oh, you have to limit your expectations. I'm like, no, I'm not limiting my expectations. I realize I'm a new artist, but I 100% want to be taking over the world with this. And I think you got to want that because what are we doing it for? Like for a few people to listen? Like, no, I want to be selling out stadiums. I want to have like successful songs. Like this is my childhood dream. So it's like, I appreciate that there's a process and it may take longer than I expect and it will be frustrating, but it's just like, sometimes these things just remind you, you have to get out there, you have to release this music. And I'm thankful for like those moments that have reminded me of that because you get fearful like sometimes something feels so precious to you, and I'm still holding back songs. I'm
Yeah.
still holding back some of the songs that I think are like because I want to like be in a position where everyone's listening, like, and I feel like it's a process. Like you just have to keep going, you just have to keep releasing, you just have to get out there and do it and put your money where your mouth is, I guess, and just be the artist you want to be, and hopefully people will start getting on the bandwagon and enjoy it.
Yeah. I agree. It's easier to get somewhere if you have a destination in mind, right? You don't
Mm.
necessarily gonna get to the exact spot that you're envisioning, but you're gonna get somewhere close to it, or at least have a better chance of getting close to it if you put it into the GPS, right? Into the life positioning system. Otherwise, you're just
Well,
kind of
yeah.
aimlessly going around.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've just basically, if that is your dream, then you've just got to go for it. And you might not end up there, but if you end up, near there or somewhere near there, and again, it's like potentially a building process. You never know. You never know what's going to hit at what time. So all it could take is one thing to fall into place, and then all of a sudden, boom. But if you're not in the game, if you're not releasing and sharing your creativity, how's anyone going to know who you are? So yeah,
Mhm.
it's kind of overcoming that fear and just getting out there, I think.
You've done an excellent job at developing like an online following. I mentioned IG earlier with just shy of 200,000 followers. You've got very solid numbers elsewhere. What's your trick? Everyone always wants to know, like, how did you do it? How do I grow my numbers?
I
When you
mean, I
started off, you had like, 100 followers in IG. How did you grow it? What's
yeah,
the
I mean,
secret?
I think over the years, like I've done so many different things that have orchestrated creativity in different ways. When I first started Instagram, it was literally dark photography. It was like horror aesthetic, like me going into these places and creating these cinematic images, and that kind of took off. And then I was kind of doing things like designing clothing in that aesthetic. I was putting lyrics onto clothes. Like I lit just any kind of outlet for anything creativity. I was literally just uploading that to, so anything that felt authentic, as long as it was creative. I love designing clothes, I love fashion, and I love combining the two. Like, I loved putting lyrics on clothing. I love having that platform to do what I want with. Like, I loved going into these, like, later on, these haunted places, and there's always been more to it than just music. And I found like the music was the sort of soundtrack to this lifestyle that I was creating, and sort of traveling the world, going to these creepy places, and sort of soundtracking that and soundtracking my emotions just feels like the next step. And I think if you're showcasing something, just make it intrinsically you, like make it something that isn't everywhere. And I don't want to be that person who's like, oh, I'm so unique, I'm so special. But people do have an individual identity. Every single human has unique DNA, like a unique identity, unique life experiences. And if you use that and channel it into your creativity and into your profile, like people will recognize something in that and follow and be interested. And yeah, it's a lot of work. It grows, like it gets disheartening. You go down a route, you find yourself being diverted slightly, and it will always come back to what you love. Like, it will always, for me, come back to music. Like, I could do a clothing range, I can do ghost hunting, I can do TV presenting, I can do YouTube, I can do all of these things, but it will always come back to music. Like, it will always be there. Like, if there's a gap, I will always find my way back to it, because that's my, like, childhood dream. So yeah, it's just accepting that life isn't just one straight line, and there's going to be a few twists and turns. And yeah, I mean, it's like, it goes with what you're saying, like people follow that journey, and you'll pick up a few people, you might lose a few people on the way, but you gotta, the momentum can slowly start building, and then yeah, just keep going and be yourself, I guess.
Based on what you're saying and what you have online, it really sounds like you've been very consistent with posting. You have tried so many different things, and ultimately that led you to kind of finding your niche. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always been within the same vibe, but yeah, I think you do grow, and you do become more comfortable, and you become more consistent, and yeah, it kind of just happens naturally over time. And I think if you observe any band from when they start out, or any artist, like, it does evolve, and it's part of the process. You do get more polished, you do get better at what you do. Like, for me as well, like, I'm really doing everything. Like, I do not have fancy teams, and I am just making sure that my creativity is being maximized. I'm not going into derelict prisons with 10 people. I'm doing my own makeup, I'm designing my own costumes, I'm painting an alien doll myself that I bought off eBay. Like, that is what I'm doing. Like, I'm doing everything. And you couldn't survive otherwise. I don't want to be wasting money on spending, like, on
Yeah.
10 people just for my vanity and my ego. Like, I don't need someone to do my hair, I don't need someone to do my makeup. I mean, it would be nice, but I don't want to fund it at the moment, especially. Like, and it feels nice. I like that sense of, I'm the art director, I'm going to set up this scene and step into it. Like,
Mhm.
this is me. I'm going to lay out this scene. I'm going to place the dolls. I'm going to find the dolls. I'm going to buy the dolls. Do you know what I mean? That kind of makes it feel so authentic. And I think if that was ever, I would struggle if it was just like, oh, you just turn up and be the star and perform. It would just feel so alien to me, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds very similar to previous guest of mine, Chrissy Spratt. She's managed to develop 5, 6 million strong following online. She does TikTok and IG the most, but she says a lot of the same things. Like, invest in yourself, try a lot of different things, be consistent, engage with your audience. If something works, great, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. But just keep going no matter what, and it's going to lead you to where you're supposed to be. There's a certain amount that you want to do yourself. You mentioned creative control and like the vision and not wasting money. Totally get that. I also am a big believer in investing in yourself. If you're not going to invest in yourself, how are you going to convince other people to invest in you? How did you know it was time for you to really start getting a publicist and outsourcing some of those things to offload, I guess, the work and create more time for yourself to be creative? At what point in your
Well,
journey?
I mean, to be honest with you, there is still so much that I do myself. Like, I have a huge understanding of that whole kind of world. And I think like bringing someone on board was more about trying to capture like the American market and take it to a level that I didn't necessarily have personal contacts in. Like, I think obviously people underestimate what PR actually is. Like, a lot of people send out this kind of boring press release saying, I've worked with this person, I've worked with that person. But, the media, and I have my own column now, so I'm sort of a journalist and an artist. So I know what it's like to be pitched to, and I know what it's like to kind of see the other side of the coin. And I just feel as well that people want your story. People don't you it's not an advert, you're not buying advertising space. People want your story. They want to invest in who you are. They want to invest in why you wrote something. The story behind the video, like, was the location haunted? And those are all things that I've been doing for years and years and years and years. And obviously, it's like you said, as an artist, you're limited. Like, I don't have a database of contacts in America, and America is an area that I really want to thrive in. I really want to to succeed in. A lot of a lot of the people I work with are from America, and I think that was quite a valuable point in my career, that I wanted to have. I wanted to have representation in America. I wanted to kind of capture that market and, the rest of the world. And yeah, it's like my producer is from America. Like, I've spent a lot of time in America, and I want to be there eventually, so it kind of made sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, it sounds like you're saying what I was hoping you would, which is do as much as you can on your own. Understand it, like even if you're not doing something, at least understand it. And not everyone's going to run a website or be a journalist, but it's not a bad thing to understand the flip side of the coin, so to speak. Like you said, it's not a bad thing to understand how publicity works, or how what it's like to pitch, what it's like to be pitched. Doesn't mean you have to do it. At some point in time, you do have to outsource, because there's only so much time in a day, and especially if you're a content creator, that takes up so much time. And then there's branding, marketing, publicity, distribution, merchandising. Like the list goes on. You can't do it all. You need a team. So
Yeah,
to
no,
hit a certain
it's scary.
market, you said, I needed someone to help out to hit that market because I don't have the connections there. That makes sense.
But I mean, I suppose it's understanding the business side of the business as well, and understanding why things work for other people. Like, you have to understand and give back. Like, if you're doing an interview with someone, people are gonna want you to share that. Like,
Mhm.
people like, the people write, like, you're a music blog. You will write about certain artists because the fans want to know about them, and you want people to visit your site to read about popular bands. And you're very good at showcasing new artists, and that's a great trait. And a lot of people don't realize that there has to be something in it for each. It either has to be interesting, you have to give something back. Like, it's a two-way street. It's not like a
Mhm.
sort of begging station, like, write about me. It's like, well, why would this person want to write about you? Like, what are they going to say to start with? Like, are you a decent person? Are you going to like share? Like, are you going to like spread the love? Like, it's kind of understanding of like how it really works. Like, no one's going to give you a leg up and just say, this girl is amazing and we're going to like promote her to death. Like, it doesn't work like that. People don't have time. People have their own lives. People have their own businesses. Like, it's not, no one's going to give you this massive big leg up for nothing. It's understanding what will work for companies and what will work for brands. And I think a lot of artists are quite entitled like that. They think they deserve to be there because they've got good music. Well, it's like, well, hopefully you do have good music, but that there's so much more to it.
Absolutely. Um, I'd love to just kind of wrap up by asking you if you have anything that you'd like to share. I did wear this shirt in your honor. I figured sharks and zombies would be a good little
Yeah.
mix.
Well, thank you. I mean, I don't really.
Seattle, Seattle. For
I'm
anyone interested, this is the museum. Was it Mopop Museum in Seattle? That's where I got it.
Okay, very cool. I mean, I don't really have anything to add. I just think, obviously, if anyone's got to the end of this interview, then we must have been doing something right, because it's been a long chat. But I mean, if anyone's slightly intrigued about what I create, then come over to the website and check it out. I mean, I always love to hear people's ghost stories and all kinds of weird stuff. Like, you don't have to just come over and tell me I'm amazing, you know? It's quite cool to have human conversations as well. So, yeah.
Brocarde, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. It was a great conversation.
Yeah, it was really lovely to speak to you. Thank you very much.